Hello everyone, welcome again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to detect a particular language in Python. So in case you are doing an NLP activity and you want to be able to detect the language, be exploring all the various packages we can use to do language detection in Python. So be working inside Colab. So let's see the packages. So there are several ways we can do that. So we have some NLP packages that we can use to detect language. So TextBlob has support for detecting language. Polyglot also have support. FastText has support for detecting language, and then the almighty Spacy. Perfect. So these are NLP packages, right? NLP libraries that we can use to detect the languages. We can also use languages that are packages or libraries that have been built specifically to do one thing, to detect the language. So we have Langdetect, we have Langid, we have Chardet, we have Guesslang, and then PyCLD3. So let's see how to work with it. So most of the time, if you want to see the importance of language detection, if you come back to Google like this and I start typing something here, right? If I start typing, Google automatically detect that this is French, right? So it is using a pre-trained model behind the scene to be able to detect the language by itself. So you'll be using several packages to help us do that option of identifying the language, right? So let's see how to work with it. So most of these things are pre-trained model. Some of them are working with pre-trained model to be able to do this activity. So let's install this particular package inside Colab. So in case you are working on your system, you can install it with just straight away with pip without the exclamation. In case from your terminal, but inside the notebook, you can just go with pip install. Be installing TextBlob. We'll be installing Polyglot. We also be installing this particular package Spacy, and then we also need to install Spacy CLD, right, to help us with detecting of the language. We can also install FastText in case you want. And then let's move on to the language packages. So Langdetect, Langid, and then Chardet. And we can also go with, we'll not be doing all of them, but these are some of them so that you have chance to try it on your own. PyCLD2 and then PyCLD3. So let's install them. So we're going to install them in our workspace. It's going to take some time for it to install. So these are going to be the languages we'll be using. So these are all the languages. So we have the language, right? Example 1 for French. So this is for French, English, Russian, Shona, Tamil, and then the rest. So it's going to install all the packages in our workspace for us. So let's start with the first one. So we're trying to see how to work with the NLP packages first, then we move on to work with the language packages. So that's finished installing all of them. I'll come back again and we start writing some code. So let's do it this way. So apologies for how it's going to be. I think it's going to be long, but we will work on it. It's going to be my NLP packages. So as we know, we can use TextBlob. It's going to be the first one. Then we also see how to use Spacy. And we also see how to use Polyglot. Then I'll show you the code for FastText. So these are actual NLP libraries that can be used to do the same thing. So let's work with it. So the first one is that we're seeing how to work with TextBlob to detect language. So it's going to be from TextBlob, import TextBlob, right? Then I'll pass in my blob. I'll pass in the particular text. So TextBlob. Let's pass an example for French. We already know that this is French, bonjour. So it's going to load the package and build a TextBlob object around it. It's supposed to be here. We did not load this one. Let's load it. So I'm running this particular cell. So we are trying to test this language, right? French, which we already know is French, and then this unknown language, right, with TextBlob. So I'll come back again, and then I run it again. Perfect. So let's check it out. So to be able to detect the language, it's very simple. Just come back. This is how to detect the language. We just go straight away with this option, say blob dot detect language, right? And I pass it in. So if I pass it there, it's going to give me and detect the language for us in a very simple way. So it is French. Very cool. So that is how to work with TextBlob. Very simple, very cool, using this option, right? Very cool. So that is all. So it was accurate because this is French, as you already know. if I check it out again, this is French, right? And it reads as Bonjour, comment vas-tu aujourd'hui, mon cher, right? How are you doing, my dear? So this is perfect. So that is how to work with TextBlob to detect the language. You just pass it here, then just call detect language. So let's try it with an unknown language. So we're going to check it on an unknown language. So this is our unknown language, which nobody knows the language now. It's my native language anyway. One of my native language. So how do we do that? So I can just do the same thing. So let's make it simple. So TextBlob, I pass in this example, that unknown language. Then I'll just come back in. So detect. I'm just making it one line to make it simple, right? So if I run it, let's see what it's going to give to us. So this gave us as ID. So what does ID mean? So let's check for the languages code here. So science.co.il. So if I go back and I check for ID, what does ID means? So ID is, where's I? Yeah. So ID is Indonesia, right? So this language, according to TextBlob, it is Indonesian, right? So TextBlob is predicting that this unknown language, Medaseminia, right, which is Chi. TextBlob predicted that this particular language is Indonesian. Okay, we just take it like that. That is something very cool. So let's call it as predicted as Indonesian ID, which is Indonesian, right? Perfect. So let's move on to the next package. So I've seen how to work with a natural language processing library, TextBlob. Now let's see how to work with a different library. So we're trying to see how to work with Spacy, right? The almighty Spacy. So to work with Spacy, we need some packages to help us with that. We need to install Spacy CLD, right, to help us with that. So in case you don't have, you can just install it with this option. So pip install Spacy CLD, right? So that is how to work with this particular package. This is trying to see how to work with language detection using Spacy. So I'll copy the code to save us time, and then you work on it. So I'll come back again and I'll paste in the code. So this is how to work with it in Spacy. So we're going to import Spacy, then going to load our language detector from language CLD. Then we are using the English model, right? Although we are using a pre-trained model, you can also use blank here. You can also use blank in case you want, right? Set the NLP as blank. It's still going to work. Then we're going to create this simple extension. We're going to add that extension to our NLP object that you have created. Perfect. Now let's work on this. I'm going to create my docs, then NLP object. Now passing my language, which we know as example of French, right? This we know is French. I'm going to create an NLP object. Now to be able to get the language, it is very simple. You just go with my docs dot underscore dot language, right? So that we have the language score, languages. That's going to give us the option of getting the language, right, that we want with Spacy. Very simple and very cool, right? So give us as French. Very simple. So it was able to detect that this language is French. We can also try the percentage of this. You can also try the percentage. What is the percentage? What is the score? By going with this option. So docs dot underscore dot language. So we have supposed to be this option, not underscore. We have it like this. Language scores, and I pass in the language that I have, which was the FR. So it's going to score them and give us the confidence level. So this is 97% sure that this is French, and everybody knows that this is French. We can also try it with our unknown language. So let's make it like this. So my docs2 NLP, I pass in my unknown language. So I'm going to pass in my unknown languages. Then I'm going to run it again. Let's see what you're going to get. This give us as EU. So what is EU? What does EU mean? So I'll come back and check what EU means. So check for EU. Let's go back and see. So what does EU? EU is, there's nothing like EU. I don't think there's a language EU here. It looks like there's nothing called EU. Wow, that is quite interesting. That's something nice. There's no language called EU. Okay. So we move on and check. So we couldn't know what the language was, right? Very cool and very nice. We couldn't know the language. You can even check the scores as we did again. So I'll copy this one and then repeat it to get the scores. So let's pass the EU here. Let's see the percentage of it. It's supposed to be this option. It could give us an error because it was not found. So let's go with 2. For the percentage, 93. So this is 93% sure that it's EU. So what does EU mean? You have to find it out later. So let us know in the comment section what EU, the code for EU means. Okay, so now let's move on. We have seen how to work with TextBlob. We have seen how to work with Spacy. Now let's move on to a different library. So we're trying to see how to work with Polyglot. Right? So with Polyglot, you have to install some packages. So let's install these ones. So Polyglot depends on these things. So install PyCLD2 and then PyICU, right? That is what Polyglot depends upon. Then Polyglot, in case you want to install it again. I've already installed it, but just to help you. So this is how to work with Polyglot. So you need these 2 packages because Polyglot depends upon them. Now we'll be trying to see how to work with Polyglot to detect our language. So it's going to be this option. So from polyglot.detect, I'm going to import the detector, right? Perfect. So after importing the detector, I'm going to go straight away with this. So for language in my detector, so Polyglot can be used to detect multiple languages which are mixed together, right? Which is quite useful and quite interesting. So if you have a list of sentences that have different language, you can use Polyglot to help you detect all of them one after the other. So perfect. So I'm passing my French here, right? Now specify that I want to get all the languages there. So languages, right? Then let's print it out. So print the language. So I run it like that. It's going to identify all the languages for that. Perfect. So the language there is French, and this is a confidence level, right? Very cool and very nice. So we can also try the same thing that we have done on our unknown language and see whether we'll be able to get it. So we're checking it on unknown language. So let's see what it's going to predict for us. I'll pass my unknown language here. If I pass it there, let's see what it's going to give to us. It gives us Basque. Oh, okay, so the EU here, wow, it's Basque. Oh, okay, wow. So that means that this library is giving us more information and gave us 93%. Perfect, right? Very, very cool and very nice. So we have seen 3 different packages or 3 different NLP libraries and how to use it to detect our language. Let's try another different language. So this one said that this predicted as EU Basque, right? But it is tree anyway. Okay, so let's try another one. Be trying it with multiple languages. So let me create multiple language. Let's see, for multiple language, I'm going to create multiple languages. Let's go to as example multi, right? Then I'll pass in multiple languages. So let's pass in, let me copy some of the languages from here and then we'll use them. So in case you have any question or contribution, you can just put inside the comment section below. So I'll put in French and Russian. I'll put Russian and I'll put in Tamil. This is Arabic. See how it's going. See how it automatically is selecting from the other way around, right? Because it's read from the other side. And let's pick Hindi, and then I'll pick Yoruba. So I'm going to add 4 different languages. I'm going to see whether we'll be able to predict them well. So let's pick Baoni. So Baoni is the same as how are you, right, in Yoruba. So these things, I'm going to copy this one and then we'll be pasting them inside our Polyglot to detect each and every one of them. So let's come back again and let's check them out. So this is going to be our list. So let's make it like this. Right, perfect. So we have 3 different sentences. Going to see whether I'll be able to detect all the languages within them. So let's run it again. So this is going to be example unknown or multi. Right, and let's run it and see. This is going to detect all the languages there. So it's giving us an example. So try passing a longer snippet of text. So let's try it out. So it was giving us an error, so let's do it in this way. So let's do it in this way. Let's loop through them. So for my I, or let's go to for sentence in example multi, right? Let's split on the punctuation. We are splitting on this point. Print that particular sentence, right? And then we will be shifting this one. We will shift it here. So be passing in the sentence. So it's going to take the sentence for us. So this is another way we can do that. So let's run it again. Perfect. So it's able to tell us, oh, so Dobryutra Kakutibia de la Sivonia. So this is Russian, right? And give us that this is Russian. The first one is Russian. Perfect. And then the second one is Arabic. I don't know what it is, but this is Arabic. Yeah. And then this is Hindi, right? And it gave us as Hindi. Very nice with a high confidence. Then the other one was Baoni Yoruba. Wow, just able to identify that that was Yoruba. Very cool and very nice. So we have seen how to use Polyglot to be able to do language detection for multiple languages. Now let's move on to FastText. You can also use FastText to help you with that. So it's going to be with FastText. So with FastText, you're supposed to first of all go with this option. So pip install FastText. So with FastText, you can also detect a language, but you need to download the pre-trained model to help you with that, right? So let me show you how to work with it. It's going to download it, and then you work on how to use FastText with that. So let's see how to work with it. So FastText requires you to use a particular pre-trained model to do that. So if I go back to the FastText official website, so we have the bin, right, which is 120 megabytes. We have this one, so let's use the smaller one. So I can download it, or I can just right click on it, get the link, copy link address, and then use it inside Colab, right? So let's use we get to fetch it. So we get, right? Then I'll paste in the link, right? So let's download it here. So it's going to download it perfectly for us. And if I check the location of where it is using ls, can see that down we have this particular library, this particular package here, right? So very simple, right? So we're trying to use this one to make our prediction. So I'll copy this. This is a minified one, so the accuracy may not be all that's correct. So let's see how to work with this. I'm going to create my model. Let's go to my lang model, and I'll just go straight away with my FastText dot load the model. I'm passing my model, right? So that is all. So this is going to load the model. So you can't find, so that is the option. So FastText is not defined because I've not imported it. So let's import it first before we define it, before we use it. So import FastText, then I'll run it again. So if I run it, it's going to load it, right? It's giving us some stuff, but you try and fix it. So this is how to work with it, right? So I'm going to go lang model.predict, right? Then the test, and then the case. So the case is the number of languages you want to use, right? So the number of labels. So let's make it k. Let's pass in example French. We already know that this is French. Then I'll pass in k of, let's say, 3 or 2. So let's run it and see. So using this model, it was able to tell us that the label French, and it gave us this particular result, right? So per the language, the first one, it is 90, this particular percent sure that it is French. English, it is this one, and then the NL, I don't know, maybe Netherlands, right? If I check it here, so it was able to detect it. So this is how to use FastText to detect a language. Very simple. You just import the library, import FastText. You load the pre-trained model, right, which you can download from here. We get to download it because we are working inside Jupyter Notebook. Then we just call the predict function on it, right? I can also make this one as 1. I make it as 1, it's going to tell me only that language, which is 99% sure that this is French. So let's try this one on the unknown language. So I'll copy this one, and then we try it in the unknown language. So you paste it on the unknown language which we had, which let's see whether it will be able to tell us unknown. And let's make it 2 because this is an unknown language, and see the prediction. So, well, it gave us as English and then Indonesian again. Give us the same thing. So it seems that language is like Indonesian. Wow, I'm surprised. So this is how to use NLP libraries, right, to do language detection. Now let's move on to libraries that are built purposely for language detection. So this is going to be the libraries. So language detection libraries. So there are several of them. As we saw, we have Langid, we have Langdetect, which is very powerful. We have J-Secur1ty. So J-Secur1ty is not only just for language but for Unicode. So let's see how to use these ones, right? So these are language detection libraries. We're trying to see how to work with them. So I'll create some code option here. Then we'll see how to work with that. So let's see the first one, which is going to be with Langdetect. So in case you want to install, just go with, we already installed it, but in case you want to install it, just go with pip install Langdetect, right? So that is detect, yeah, perfect, because we have already installed it. Now let's see how to work with it. So it's very simple. Just go with from Langdetect, import detect, right? Perfect. So that is how to work with Langdetect. Then I'm going to just print my detect. I pass in the example. So example French. Let's pass in another one. So print detect example, let's say Russian. Let's use RU, right, for Russian. And let's print, so detect the unknown. Let's see the result. So now it's going to give us, wow, so the French was French, the Russian was Russian, and then the unknown is ET. So what is ET? ET is Estonian, right? So it was able to predict and tell us that the ET that we had was Estonian. So I can make it better. Let's make it better. So I've made it better. So we see the text and then the rate. So bonjour, right? So it is French, as we saw. This is Russian and this is ET. So ET is Estonian, right? So our Langdetect predicted the unknown as ET, Estonian. Very interesting, right? Estonian. Yeah, perfect. So that is one way using Langdetect. Very, very powerful library. Now let's move on to the next option. It is a Langid. So we're trying to see how to use Langid. So it's very simple. It's going to be import Langid. So it's going to be Langid, right? So we have imported Langid. Then with Langid, we can just detect our language straight away with langid.classify. Then you pass in your language. So example, let's use for now Espanol, right? So it's going to tell me that this is Espanol, right? Perfect, very cool, right? So that is how to use Langid. Very simple. So let's try with unknown. So I check it out. So we have seen how to use Langid to identify a language, right? Very nice. So now let's look at the last example. It gave us as Estonian. It predicted it as Estonian. Let's take the last one, which is going to be J-Secur1ty. So J-Secur1ty is not just for language, but it's mostly for detecting character, right? So you can also use it. So this example. So import J-Secur1ty. Then we're going to detect this particular language. Then we're going to encode it, right, with this particular encoding before it to be able to work, right? If I run it again, it works from 1 to 5 and upwards. Perfect. So that this one gives us as Russian, right? So let's try another example. So I'm going to try another one. So I'll come back again and let's try a different example. So I'll be changing it from Russian to, let's say, French or something. So let's go back and pick one of the languages. Let's pick our unknown language and see whether it will be able to predict it all. Come back again. So that is how you do that, right? You must put it in this particular format. And let's try it. So it could not identify the language, right? If it's not able to identify the language, it gives you empty. But it's able to identify the language, gives you this particular result. You can even change this one to UTF-8. UTF-8. And it's still not going to give you the result, right? It's telling us that unknown UTF is supposed to be UTF-U. See what I spelled? UTF, not UFT. Right, it not give us the language, right? Because it's not all the time it's able to identify the language, but it's able to identify the particular encoding type, because CHARDEC is only for checking encoding. That is one of the packages you can also use. Now let's check the last one, which is a neural network approach. So this is going to be PyICD3, right? So which we'll be using to help us. It's not PyICD, PyCOD3. So let's try how to work it. So in case you want to install it, just go with pip. We have already done it, but you can install it again. Pip install PyCOD3 to install it on your system, right? Now let's see how to work with it. So it's already installed. So just go straight away and go with import COD3, then COD3.get the language. And you pass in example. So let's pass in example. You can use, let's say, German, right? To see whether it's going to detect for us. We already know that this is German, and give us as AF. Sometimes it always gives you errors. I don't know why, but the probability is very low. So let's try a different language. Copy this one. Because this is a neural network, so it is dependent upon the amount of data that was used to train it. So let's check Spanish, right? Pivot was supposed to give us with a higher probability, because I'm sure the amount of data used to train the German was very low. That's why I give us this particular probability. But for the Espanol, right, it was able to give us a higher probability that this is Espanol. You can also try for the unknown language, and let's see whether it will be able to tell us it is still Estonian. So unknown. Let's check it out. Give us as AF. So AF is, I'm sure AF will be Afrikaans, right? AF will be Afrikaans. Hopefully it is Afrikaans. So let's check it out. Yeah, AF is Afrikaans. So I think it is feeling that every other language doesn't recognize that sounds Afrikaanish. It's Afrikaans, right? So that is how to use several libraries to do language detection in Python. But the final truth of this particular language, which we were working on, is Chi, right? So Chi is my native language, so it's a Ghanaian language. So we have to work on finding a model to be able to detect this particular language. So thank you for watching this long tutorial. And then the word is Midas Minia, which means thank you, my brothers, right? So thank you for watching this long tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can just put it inside the comment section below. So the basic idea is that we have learned several libraries we can use to detect a particular language, right? So you can actually include this one in your app, right? I've seen how to work with TextBlob, Polyglot, FastText, Spacy, Langdetect, Langid, CHARDEC, and then PyCOD. We did not check all this. You can also try it as an example, as an assignment. So thank you for watching. See you another time. Stay blessed. Bye. But check the links below for more of these materials.